Vice President of Collaboration and Special Initiatives at San Diego Grantmakers. My pronouns are she and her. And we, like you, are all COVID, all SBA, all the time. I would just welcome you to this joint webinar with Mission Driven Finance, CDC Small Business, and San Diego Grantmakers. We are going to get through a little bit of a presentation for you and then dive into Q&A. So just please go ahead and remain muted for the first part. We'll be monitoring the questions that you submit through that chat box over time, and then helping to curate your questions, and we'll have you weigh in and ask those questions live. So please join me with a deep breath. It's been a long day, it's been a long week, it's been a long month, and it's only the 2nd. So if you want to just take a breath in and a breath out, and we will get started. With that, I'm happy to hand it over to Debbie to give us a welcome. I'm going to turn back to get Susan online with us here. Debbie, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan. And thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us today. I am pleased to be here in partnership, San Diego Grantmakers, together with Mission Driven Finance, and my colleague and a longtime leader with San Diego Grantmakers, David Lynn, co-founder of Mission Driven Finance. He and his team, together with San Diego Grantmakers and our team here, have been working diligently today to try and really bring you like the best of the resources that are available so that you can be well prepared to put forth your applications, utilizing maybe some systems that are not typical for you, but that we know it's really important that you get the support that you need during this time. So we want to do everything possible to help that. We are absolutely delighted that highly qualified, highly experienced, and a really good friend of San Diego Grantmakers, who is also one of the leaders on our Impact Investing Committee at San Diego Grantmakers, is here this evening to share with you the latest breaking news and guidance from the Small Business Administration. But I do just want to preface it with news is changing pretty quickly. Like an hour ago, the SBA announced some new information to all of the SBA lenders. So please bear with us. We are sharing the most current and accurate information at this time. So with that, I am really pleased to introduce Susan Lamping. And Susan is the Vice President of Sales for the CDC Small Business Finance. She's an incredibly experienced lender and really cares deeply about the work that we're all doing at San Diego Grantmakers. And so therefore, I know that she cares deeply about all of the work that you're doing. She and David, she's going to be leading the session as we walk through the information. David's going to be helping to support her in that, because we do anticipate a lot of questions with Megan and Carlos also monitoring the chat. So that you can be sure you get as much as you need to know. So with that, thank you so much, Susan, for taking time in what I know is a business moment for you to be with us, and I'll turn it over to you. And I hope we've tap danced long enough that you've got good audio.
Actually, I think you were, correct me if I'm wrong, but on our agenda, we were going to invite David to say a few words first. And I also want to note to everybody that we are recording this session, so you'll have access to it later, but also know that you're being recorded.
I definitely don't need to get between everybody's questions and the main event with Susan. So happy to support, happy to be part of it, and just echo, like Debbie said, all the info is coming fast and furious. I know everybody wants crystal clear answers, and there won't be, but hopefully we can. The goal is everybody can be prepared that as these things come out, everybody will be able to move forward as expediently as possible with your lender and with your information, so we can try and get the capital in the hands of all of our critical nonprofits here. So Susan's on. Have at it.
Thank you, David. I don't think I don't think we have her able to hear us yet, so we've just asked her to log out and try logging in again. I'm sure this is not the first time you all have been on a webinar where the technology isn't fully cooperating, but we'll do that now.
Maybe at this point then, David, I know your team, and my apologies for jumping right into Susan. Thank you. I'm really glad you shared some comments. I thought you might close us out today. I was wondering maybe if you want to talk about your CFO put together a really good resource list of what the folks on the phone would want to collect together in order to be able to prepare their application. Maybe you could share that in anticipation of Susan being able to join us.
Sure, and I don't know how many are on the video versus on the phone. With this list that may have gone out to people.
It did go out to the registrants.
On the screen, if things will load for me.
Welcome to Ring Central Meeting.
If you're just joining us, go ahead and mute yourself, please.
So I think probably people can see this document now on the screen. I know this is not the most, this is always the type of slide you launch a webinar with to get really excited about what's going on. But as a sense of the type of information specifically for the payment or payroll protection program to be pulling capital, it's really about the payroll. So everything we're seeing to be prepared for whatever is coming from the SBA and the banks and such for this program is really to make sure you have all of your payroll documentation that you can for 2019 and through the first quarter of 2020, and the ability to slice and dice and calculate it a number of different ways as these regs come out. So for instance, things like we're seeing people over 100,000 are excluded. So you may need to be able to not just download this whole payroll, but adjust it to cap amounts for any employees that are making over 100 grand, which of course in the nonprofit sector in San Diego is like 90% of our employees all make over 100 grand, right? So it's all good, everything's good from that sense. But this is the list, and I think as Debbie said, everybody should have received this. There's more info. I think the advantage, and I know Susan's going to talk about it, or at least to get started from what people are seeing, the actual application is pretty brief. I think people have a lot of questions on what some of the numbers and what should be included, but this is not an extensive 80-page government application like we are all used to. It is very brief, so it's more going to be about getting the information in place and from everything we're hearing, being as accurate as possible because of the mass demand. You don't want to be one where they had to come back and ask you to resubmit or correct something. Susan on?
She is not. She's trying to log in again.
Is there anything else or stuff we had from Susan that we wanted to share?
She says, I can't hear anything. I'm so sorry. Debbie, do you want to say a few words? And we also, if you have questions, please go ahead and start putting those in the chat box and we will begin collecting them.
I am seeing some questions coming in. And maybe we could, I'm writing to Susan to ask if perhaps she doesn't need to hear us, but she could give the presentation and we'll communicate with her this way because we can hear her. So we don't know exactly. So we don't know exactly why she can't. But if we could encourage her, because she has the slide deck, so I really can't do it without her. She's sharing her screen.
David, if you go ahead and unshare yours, I think that might let us do this. Thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for your patience. We're doing our best, creating as we go, as with everything that seems to be happening.
Could we resend the link to her, please, just in case?
Sure.
In case that helps her.
Here's a question that somebody might know. Do we submit our documents and upload them at the time of application?
You know, I might be helpful here. Your applications have to come through your bank. They can't come through any other entity. And most banks are requiring that you had a business account with them prior to February 15th in order to make the filing. So, so make sure you are talking to your bank and getting in the queues for that.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And maybe we can even add a little bit of what appears to be some breaking news. And that is because I think the SBA realized that many of the potential applicants did not have a banking relationship with an SBA lender. And also the SBA lenders felt that they were going to be overwhelmed. So I believe that in a webinar that I was on at 4 o'clock where they were rolling out some new information, I believe that the SBA is seeking to problem solve that. So to open up some other pathways to get the applications in. I think the SBA lenders are the ones who are going to be able to get that information first. But we understood that the administration had realized that this was a problem. I will also just mention, though, that one other thing that we did ask on our funder call at 3 o'clock is if we have any relationships with banks, any of the funders, if perhaps they could advocate with their banks to try and encourage them to accept new customers, i.e. nonprofit organizations that were seeking to submit an SBA loan application. So we're actively trying to help in that regard, understanding that that is probably the most important pain point after you all have your applications completed, is you need to have a place to submit them. So we're trying to work in all the ways we can.
Okay, if you do have a bank, though, make sure you have an online account with them. So don't lose that opportunity. If you do have a banking relationship, make sure you have an online account with them. That's pretty critical.
Good point. Excellent. Thank you.
So we are going to try to do this without Susan being able to hear us. She's going to go ahead and share her screen right now, and we'll give this a go.
Okay, hey everybody. Can I just get a nod from David and Debbie and Megan that you can hear me? Yes, okay, good. I can't hear you, so I'm just going to speak, and any questions maybe people could type into the chat, or maybe Megan can text them to me. So sorry about all the technology glyphs. I'm not sure why me, your speaker, was the only one that couldn't get any audio, but anyways, here we are. So I'm Susan Lamping with CDC Small Business Finance, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Payment Protection Program. So the Payment Protection Program was signed into action last Friday, and it goes into effect tomorrow, and it authorizes $349 billion in forgivable loans for small businesses, specifically to pay payroll and employees during the next few months. let's see. So yeah, it starts tomorrow. I know a lot of people have had a lot of questions about it, and we as lenders have had a lot of questions as well, and all of those questions haven't been answered, so I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can. You really want to get in the queue for this program as quickly as you can. It is first come, first serve, and so as soon as the money runs out, the money won't be accessible anymore. So you do really want to contact whoever your bank of account is and start with them first and get in that queue. So how much money can you get? The money is for payroll, and so the calculation is that you can get 2.5 times your average monthly payroll over the last 12 months, or $10 million, whichever is smaller. So for most of us, it's probably 2.5 times our average monthly payroll. So let me give you an example. Let's say your average monthly payroll is $100,000 over the last 12 months. That's what it's averaged. So you could get $250,000 or 2.5 times that $100,000 as the payment protection plan loan for you. Okay, so that's the amount that you can get, up to 10 million. It is a 1% interest rate, and it's a 2-year term with no prepayment penalty. And they do defer 11 months of payments, so you don't have to actually start making payments until the 12th month, but the whole thing can be forgiven. And so we'll talk about how you get that debt forgiven. So the money has to be used for payroll or other operating expenses, including mortgage interest, rent, utility costs, any kind of payroll taxes, that kind of thing. 75% of the money has to be used for payroll. The other 25% can be used for all of those other working capital needs. So if you don't use 75% of the money for payroll, it's not going to be forgiven. Okay, that's one of the requirements for it to be forgiven. Another requirement is you can't compensate employees more than $100,000. So if you have any employees that make more than $100,000, they're capped at the $100,000. After 8 to 10 weeks of you using the money as you said you were going to, there's a process where you apply to your lender for that debt forgiveness. And essentially what you do is you provide proof of how the money was used, providing proof that 75% of it was used for payroll and the other 25% was used for various other working capital needs. And if you meet those criteria, then 100% of that debt is forgiven and you don't have to pay it back. If you don't meet those criteria, then the terms apply and it would be termed out to 2 years at 1%. Okay. So how do you apply? The application process starts tomorrow. You do, like I said, you do want to go through a bank or some kind of a CDFI or nonprofit lender like us. Let's see. So lots of banks are offering it. So I really suggest that you start with your bank of account. Many banks, from what we're hearing on the streets, are offering it to their customers only. So you really want to start with your bank of account where you have your account, your accounts, any debt, any loans that you have out. Let's see, and then that link at the bottom of that slide, and I can make sure that the group, the San Diego Grantmaker group, gets this so that they can send it out to everyone on this call. But that link is a link to find a lender that's offering the payment protection plan. So let's say your bank of account doesn't offer it. There will still be other lenders that will offer it, and some will offer it to everyone, not just people that are their customers. Okay, so that's basically it in a nutshell. And I'm not sure how I'm going to get the questions because I can't hear anything. So either Megan, you can type them to me, or I could look in the chat box if I can pull that up.
Oh, yeah. I will text you some and I'll also tell her to go ahead and look in the chat box. We're going to start And Debbie, if you remember this from the previous one, there's several questions about contractors. If you want to answer that.
Yes.
Our bank says that NCUA insured won't be participating. Okay, yeah, I would suggest going to that link to find a lender. The quarterly reports for this year will not go out until the 13th for us. Can we use other documents? What I'm seeing is generally what most lenders want to look at for the last 12 months of your payroll is actually your 2019 payroll information. So whatever your year-end payroll was is what they want to look at. For a church, does payroll cost include the housing allowance? I wouldn't think so, but I don't know. I mean, housing allowance, like the people that work at the church are given a housing allowance as part of their compensation. If that's the question, I don't know. I don't want to answer wrong. Will the chat box Q&A be shared with everyone? That's a San Diego Grantmakers question. Does the borrower need to have a decrease in revenue to qualify, or can his loan be used to increase employment? I mean, not really. The purpose of this loan is to keep people employed, not to create new employment. So it's to pay people who otherwise would have been potentially laid off. How about 1099 independent pay? Okay, that's a good question. 1099 independent contractors are eligible on their own, so they don't count in your payroll calculation. They can apply for this loan on their own as a 1099 employee. They would file a Schedule C sole proprietor, so they don't count in your calculation. I have a complicated question. May I unmute? I'm fine.
Sure,
Barbara,
yeah.
if you want to unmute. Or maybe Megan, you can unmute.
Hi there, this is Barbara. And so we're the
But
diamond.
you know what? I can't hear you. Barbara, I can't hear you. So I'm sorry.
Barbara, go ahead and type it into the box and we'll get
I can't hear anything.
I typed it in, but I think it's higher up, and I've already typed it.
She's talking, but I can't hear her.
I'll find it.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm going to go on. Sorry, Barbara, you can type your complicated question, but I can't hear it. Does the average of the past 12 months equal all of 2019, or can it be February and March? My understanding is most lenders want to see 2019 information, not January, February, March. If we only have employees the last 5 months, can we show what we paid, but is that too short of a time to qualify? My understanding is you have to have been in business as of February 2020 to qualify. So I don't know what the calculation would be, but I think you would be eligible. And also your lender, I mean, you can ask for whatever you want, but in the end, your lender is going to do the calculation to figure out what you're qualified for. What if your employees are currently laid off, plan to be laid off, or have their hours reduced? Are we still eligible for this loan? Well, like I said, the loan needs to be used for payroll. So if they're laid off and you take the loan out, what are you going to use it for, right? You really want to use it for paying payroll. And if you don't use it for that, then you can't get, the debt won't be forgiven. So you could probably get it, but in order to get it forgiven, you have to actually use it to pay people and then provide proof of that. Let's see, can you use a bank of your choice or only approved lenders? Well, you have to use a bank that's participating in this program, right? So you can use any bank you want as long as they're participating in this program. Okay, here's Barbara's question. Barbara, we have a few school teachers who are contracted from January through April. They are on February 15th payroll, but their contracts end April or May. These teachers take our payroll from 5 staff to 12 staff during their contracted period. Do we include them in our payroll average, or do we keep them on payroll during the 8-week period? I would include them in your payroll average. I mean, I would include the aggregate over the 12 months, if I understood correctly. Okay, a lot of questions. I'm going to do my best to keep going. Maybe people could stop typing for just a second. Okay, the application doesn't have a place to include rent, mortgage, interest, or utilities. Where does that get added on? So in determining the loan amount you can request, it's based solely on payroll. So you
how much you can get is based on payroll, but then you can use 25% of what you get for other things. That's why the loan application doesn't have anywhere to list those other expenses. Okay. We've just added 50% more full-time staff positions as of January 1st. Will the 2020 payroll data be discouraged, or can we include that in the monthly average payroll? It's going to be a question for your lender. All lenders are going to handle this differently, but again, from my experience, most lenders are saying they want to look at 2019 information. How will PPP recipients be affected if they're also applying for other relief grant loans and programs? So you can apply for multiple loans. You can apply for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan that has a $10,000 grant component built into it. You just have to make sure that they're for different purposes. So if you're applying for the Payroll Protection Loan, you have to specify that that's only for payroll, and then you apply for the Economic Injury Loan and specify that that's for mortgage, rent, utilities, that kind of thing. So you have to specify that there are different uses of proceeds, and you have to show the need for the multiple loans. So if your expenses aren't high enough, then you're not going to get multiple loans. But if you show the need for multiple loans, then you're eligible to apply for multiples. Okay, we learned on a webinar a few hours ago that independent contractors can be included in the payroll cost. Is that, is it that they can be included but aren't required? No, I mean, I was just on a call with the SBA, and it was really clearly spelled out that independent contractors are not to be included in your calculation of payroll because they can apply for the program on their own. Okay. May we also apply for the disaster loan with the grant? Yes, you can apply for that as well. And just so you all know, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is offered by the SBA, so you go to sba.gov to learn about that, includes a $10,000 forgivable grant as part of the application process. So to get that $10,000 grant, you have to apply for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the Sba Disaster Loan, and then in the application there's a little checkbox that says, yes, I want to apply for the $10,000 grant as well. And then it's kind of comes together as one package, the grant and the loan. Okay. Have you reviewed the categories at the top of the application? Nonprofit, vet, independent contractor, self-employed. Do we have to check one of those boxes? We are a C Corp owned by one person with 5 employees. I don't know because I haven't reviewed the application in that much detail to know, but if there are options as to what your entity type is, then my assumption is, yeah, you would want to check whatever type of entity you are. And I'm sure there's an entity type that is a corporation. There's got to be. Let's see. The questions are coming so fast I can't keep up with them. Is it correct on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan you can apply and get $10,000 grant and then not accept the loan? I've heard that. I have heard that you can take the $10,000 grant and then not accept the loan. It makes me feel nervous because there'll be all these people that are really not viable for any kind of funding that apply for this loan and then just take the grant. But I do believe that that is an option. In the IEDL loan, that's the Sba Disaster Loan, is there a way to make the loan forgivable for nonprofits? No, the disaster loan is not a forgivable loan. Only the payment protection loan is the forgivable loan. The disaster loan includes a $10,000 grant, so that part you could consider forgivable, but the rest of it you do have to pay back. The regular rate for the disaster loan is 3.75, but for nonprofits it's 2.75, so it is a very good favorable rate. Since payroll costs include group healthcare benefits, do you need to show invoices for your group healthcare benefit monthly cost, since those are paid outside payroll? I don't know, and I don't even know exactly what documentation they want to see at this point. That hasn't really been fully announced. So that'd be a question for your lender. Okay, if everyone is reemployed by June 30th, is that forgivable? A few of our staff are already on unemployment. So if your staff go on unemployment, that's government money. And if you apply for the payment protection loan, that's government money. So they can only get paid in one way. Either they go on unemployment and then you don't need the payment protection loan because your staff are already getting paid, or they don't go on unemployment and you apply for this payment protection loan and pay them, right? So if some are on unemployment and some aren't, then you could, those who aren't on unemployment, you could pay. But if someone's on unemployment, you can't also pay them through the payment protection loan because that would be basically double paying them, right? We applied for the work share program to cover some of our staff. Will this affect if we apply for PPP? Work share program, I don't know what that is. The work share program, I can't answer that. I'm not sure what it is, sorry. Do we need to upload documents when we submit the application? I don't know because it hasn't even been rolled out yet. I mean, tomorrow is when the application will be officially accepted by lenders. So I'm not sure how that will work. If I receive HUD and CDBG money, am I able to apply? Yes. A work share is with the state. Yeah, I don't see why the work share program would preclude you from getting this then. If we don't have all the docs or we need to make revisions, do we go back to the end of the queue? I don't know. That would be for the payment protection loan. I don't really know. I'm sorry. I don't know everything. I don't know all the answers. What actual costs do we use to calculate our average payroll costs? My understanding it is payroll only, but that's what the SBA said, just payroll and payroll taxes. That's my understanding. Best practice for tracking where the money is going. Would you suggest depositing the money into a dedicated account and pulling from that account for payroll? Well, I mean, wouldn't you have a payroll statement, something that shows, you can print out, this is all of the payroll that I paid my people over a certain amount of time. So whatever your payroll or your payroll tax statement, right? You would have something like that. I'm not a payroll person. For a nonprofit who signs as the owner, there's no personal guarantee required on this, so no individual has to guarantee these loans. Megan, whenever you want me to stop answering questions, just let me know. I'm just gonna keep going. I'll just look at your text. So Megan text, can we use PPP to bring employees back who were laid off or reduced hours? Yes. That's the whole purpose. If you want to bring people back on and pay them. Do benefits count as payroll? I don't know. That's a question I don't know. Do you count benefits included? I know that you can use the money for paying for benefits, but I don't know if that's included in the calculation, and I don't want to answer incorrectly. Keep this up. Someone said, I hope you hit a Guinness Book of World Records and keep this up for 24 hours. Oh my gosh, I wish I could hear you guys. It's crazy. This is the third webinar I've done today. Okay, on the payment protection SBA application, do you include all employees or just full-time employees? You can include all employees. You can include part-time employees as well. Okay, one certification on the form is during the period from February to December, the applicant, oh my gosh, people are typing so fast that the question goes, sorry. The applicant hasn't and won't receive other loans under this program. I'm assuming that doesn't preclude us if we applied for IEDL. Yeah, exactly, the same thing. So it's like you can't double dip. So you can't apply for 2 loans for the same purpose, just like you can't use your PPP money to pay for someone who is now getting unemployment. So if you clearly have spelled out separate uses of funds, then you can get multiple loans,
So,
but you can't get multiple loans for this.
about a program to support a nonprofit organization.
And you can also only get one PPP loan. So you can't go to one lender and get one and then go to another lender and get one. You can only get one PPP loan. U.S. Chamber of Commerce stated that payroll tax should be excluded from the payroll cost. Did that change? I don't know.
Could have
Sorry, I don't answer that.
Stay on mute, please. Thanks so much. Just type your
Hi,
question.
Susan. We're documenting questions.
You
Oh,
have one? We're
I
doing
mean,
our
live
best to
Google
keep up.
Doc, and you can read them off there. Oh my gosh. That's a lot. You want me to go to this Google Doc now instead of looking at the chat? I'm going to just keep going on the chat. Okay, for the number of jobs field on the application, should this be the average number of employees from 2019 or the current number of employees at the date of application? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I would probably, if it were me, I would put in how many jobs you have now, not how many have been like lost because of this crisis, but how many you had just before the crisis. Okay, can a small sole proprietor that had one employee last year, but now has 3 qualify only 2019 personal tax returns? Yes, sole proprietors, even if you have no employees, just like independent contractors, right? So an independent contractor gets paid a 1099 and they file that 1099 on their tax return as a Schedule C, and they are eligible to apply for PPP. So if you're a small sole proprietor and you have 1 employee or no employees, you can still apply for that. And the calculation, I don't know exactly what it is, but the calculation has to do with your net profit, because basically your net profit on your Schedule C is the income that you take for yourself. So your calculation would be based on your net profit. I don't know exactly what it is, so I don't want to quote it wrong. Okay, we keep getting the same question, so I want to say it in another way. The question is applying for PPP and the disaster loan considered double dipping? It's not double dipping if the use of proceeds is different. If the use of proceeds is the same, it's double dipping, right? So you got to make sure you've got 2 use of proceeds. If you're an organization with some cash reserves, should you still apply for this PPP? I mean, absolutely, if you want to. There's no reason why you shouldn't. Honestly, it's free money. You know what I mean? Like, you apply for it, you use it to pay your payroll, and you get it reimbursed. So, you know, it's 2.5 months worth of your payroll. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't, you know, apply for it, especially if it's helping to preserve jobs. For organizations that need help with the application, who are some grant writers like Derek Floyd, who is on this call? Derek Floyd, shout out, you got a little plug there, and or others that could help for a reasonable fee. I don't know, but you could go to the SBDC or you could go to SCORE, and I'm sure they'll get up to speed quickly on these programs and how to help people through this application. Okay, will something also be forgivable for independent contractors? Yes, the PPP is forgivable for sole props, nonprofits, C Corps. It's forgivable for everyone. Okay, to be clear, is it accurate that nonprofits do not need to list anyone under the owner portion of the application? We just leave that portion blank with no name on it. I don't know, because I'm not an application specialist. So I've looked at the application briefly, but not in detail. So, I mean, a nonprofit doesn't have an owner, so I don't know how you would really list an owner if there is no owner. So yeah, if it were me and I was a nonprofit, I would leave it blank, and I would probably note in there, nonprofit organization, you know, no owner. Can schools apply for PPP? I don't know, like a nonprofit school, like maybe a Montessori school, something like that. Yes, if it's that kind of a school, then yes. Are electronic signatures likely to be valid? Yes. Yes. I know there's been talk of that, probably some kind of signature through DocuSign. Thank you, Megan, for posting SCORE. Okay, Barbara again. Barbara has the complicated situation. If we keep the teachers in our salary average, what about the head count? Will we have fewer staff after the 8-week? We will have fewer staff after the 8-week period. Should we pay teachers beyond their contract, which ends before the 8-week period? I don't know. I'm not 100% clear on Barbara's situation. I mean, it sounds like for this next 8 weeks, she's going to have less salaried people. And so she doesn't want to have a surplus of money and then not be able to pay everyone. So I don't want to answer a question that I don't know for sure the answer to. Let's see, we've got some more questions here from Megan. Would things like hazard pay be able to be included during the 8 to 10 weeks? I don't know why not, as long as it's paid to employees. For a Texas-based nonprofit with a San Diego chapter, is it best to apply individually as a local office or as an organization as a whole? Well, you have to, I mean, the primary entity has to apply for the loan. So if the San Diego chapter is its own entity, it could apply. But if it's not actually its own freestanding entity, it would need to be whatever like the parent company would be. Does it make a difference that the employee resign on their own? No, it doesn't. You can still apply for the loan. If an employee quits, this was a question that was just on an SBA webinar I was just on. If an employee quits, you just have to explain why they quit and that you're not paying them anymore because they quit on their own accord, but you can still apply for the loan. Megan, I'm still okay. I'm happy to stay on for a little bit longer if you guys want to keep listening to me. Chris asks, who are the participating lenders? Megan, are you able to send the link out of the participating lenders? Yeah, you got it. Okay, good. Okay, I've already cut employee hours and they have applied for unemployment for the reduction of hours, but have yet to receive benefits, and this loan is approved. Do I pay them retroactive for the time they had off? As long as you're not paying them for time that they're getting paid for unemployment. So they can't get paid for unemployment and through this program, but as long as it's separate, then you can pay them. Okay, let's see. If we have 500 employees, NP, but over 75 locations, can I apply? This program is for businesses that have 500 employees or less, or there's another size standard that you can check based on your NAICS code. So Joelle, maybe you could post your NAICS code up there and I could help you do some research. Okay, who can do the application? The business owner, him, herself, or the representative like a manager can apply on behalf of the owner if the owner is not present? Well, my understanding is you guys are all nonprofits, so whoever you want that represents your company can apply for the loan. If it's a for-profit business, you would want it to be whoever owns the business would be the one that would apply. Just like I wouldn't apply for a loan for a business that I didn't actually own. Thanks, Megan. Megan just posted the link to see what lenders are participating, and it'll be updated regularly. Okay, for lenders in San Diego Imperial Valley, does it make a difference that the employee resigns? Oh, I think we already answered that. Okay, say there's an employee for which a portion of their salary is paid through a funder, and that continues. Can we use PPP money to pay the portion of their salary that comes from our general fund? Yes. Yeah, because that would be on your payroll. So yes, you can do that. What time are applications starting to be accepted tomorrow? To be honest, I think they're starting at midnight online. So, and there's like that, California to East Coast difference. And so Yeah, I've heard some are starting at midnight, but some might be starting at a reasonable time that you would open in the morning, like 9 o'clock. But keep in mind, 9 o'clock here is noon there, so noon on the East Coast. So if you're going with a national lender that has an East Coast presence, they could be up as soon as 6 a.m., and not 9 a.m. Okay, how may we access the recording of this session? Megan, maybe she could answer that.
Yeah, we will post it online and make sure in a follow-up email that you get that. Make sure that you did register through the link. If not, you can still go to the link and register so you get that email, or you can, I will regret this, but send me an email at megan@sdgrantmakers.org.
Good, okay. All right. As long as we get our application in tomorrow, do we have a good chance of receiving the funds? As long as you meet the requirements, and you can provide the payroll expenses and all of that. Yeah, I mean, the money's not going to be used up in a day. There's $350 billion. So yes, I would say submit tomorrow and you have a very good chance of getting it. Some of the lenders on the list only want to work with organizations with revenue of 5 to 10 million. So then you need to find a different lender. I mean, that might be the case. I don't know. Some of the big banks might, just want to work with larger customers. Some of the big banks might want to, and many of them just want to work with their own customers. So you need to find a lender that meets your criteria, that's willing to work with your size of business, and hopefully, you'll start with your bank of account. And some of you might have multiple banks of accounts. Okay, our bank notified us that they received final regulations and guidelines 15 days from the day the bill was signed. They aren't ready to receive any applications. Okay, yeah, some lenders aren't ready to start lending, and so you just have to wait for them to get ready or apply with someone else. Okay. This is great. I did reach out to our bank while on the call, and he sent me the link to their wait list. That's fantastic. And just for example, our company, CDC Small Business Finance, we're also a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit lender, and we make loans to small businesses through the SBA and non-SBA products. We do commercial real estate loans as well as startups, business acquisitions. We have about 3,000 customers, borrowers that have borrowed from us, and we are participating in the payment protection plan. I didn't mention that, but we are. And at this point, because compared to the big banks, B of A, Wells, Union, all of those, we're very small. I mean, we have about $2 billion out on the streets, but compared to what banks have, it's a little drop in the bucket. And so we are starting with lending to only our customers. At this point, we're going to start by lending to customers and then see how that goes and see what level of demand our customers have. And then we would open it up to others, after we reassess. And I think that's what a lot of the banks are looking at too. They're looking at starting with their own customers and then reassessing. Okay. How soon after the application are they expecting to be approved? From what I've heard, right, it launches tomorrow, so, experience will tell, but from what I have heard, the expectation is that it will go quickly. And one nice thing about this, which is different than the Sba Disaster Loan, is banks are lenders, and banks know lending and they know their specialty is lending, and so they're going to be efficient at this. As opposed to going through the Sba Disaster Loan, where they don't have the level of lending experience that banks have. And so the disaster loans are a little bit clunky and slower, and people are waiting 2 weeks to hear anything. But through the banks, I think it's going to be a lot faster. So I would anticipate you would hear something quickly, for sure within a week. That's what I would anticipate. Okay, thank you, Susan. You're welcome. How can we become one of your customers by tomorrow? Go buy a building tonight. Okay, if the banks are closed for the pandemic, like Wells Fargo, we get sent to Central Wells Fargo call center, not to our banker. Yeah, exactly. All of these PPP loans are going to be offered online. the process is going to be online. You're not going to go into a bank and talk to a human being. I mean, if you have a banker, you can email them and get information, and they'll direct you to the site. But even like with us, you know, we're fairly on the smaller side, where all of our customers are applying online through an online portal. Okay. Tia Quinn, you're welcome. Oh, you guys are sweet. Okay, I was just informed by our bank that the site to apply will not be ready by tomorrow. Also, the secretary stated in an interview yesterday, funds would be replenished if they ran out. Okay, I'm not familiar with that, but that's awesome. And yeah, it sounds like maybe Wells isn't ready to start, so it's just a waiting game until they are ready to start. If the funds aren't going to run out in a day, seriously, they'll be around for a little while. This program goes through June, so maybe as we get closer to June, funds will start to run out. Okay. I think I answered all the questions. Is there anything else here? Okay. I'm a program director at a nonprofit, but my status is independent contractor, so my salary cannot be included in the PPP application. How can I apply for myself as an individual when I don't operate my business entity or have an EIN, such as a yoga teacher or other sole proprietor? So Daniela, as if you get paid as an independent contractor, you get a 1099. And so normally 1099 folks would file a Schedule C in your personal tax return as a sole proprietor. That's how you would file your taxes. And so you would apply on that Schedule C. So your Schedule C might be Daniela doing business as, you know, Daniela Carlson, whatever. You might not even have a business name. You just file a Schedule C under your individual name, but you can still apply under your individual name as a sole prop filing a Schedule C as a recipient of a 1099 income. I hope that makes sense. Okay, can an S Corp apply for the loan? Yes. Okay, hi, I'm a similar situation as Barbara. Uh-oh, the complicated situation again, where we have dance teachers that work part-time, only a few hours. One isn't going to be working since schools are closed. Will we be penalized, loan not forgiven, since he won't be working until the school starts back up again? We aren't laying him off. He just isn't working until school starts up. Yeah, so I think the question is like, okay, you want to get this certain amount of money, 2.5 times your average monthly payroll over the last 12 months, but you actually don't need that amount over the next 2 months. You need it later in the future. And I don't know if you can spend it later in the future. I don't want to quote the wrong thing, but I like that question, so I'm going to find out the answer to it. So I'll have it for the next person that asks me. Yeah, like, can you use it in 3 months or 4 months? And I don't know the answer to that, so I don't want to answer wrong. It's mostly about the number of employees. So it's not so much about the number of employees as about the dollar amount. You know, like if you are able to spend all of the money that you get in the next 2.5 months, then you've met the requirements, regardless of how many employees it's on. Okay, the disaster loan app doesn't allow you to put NA for owner, assuming we put in our board members as a nonprofit instead. I think that's reasonable if you want to put your board members in. For the disaster loan, if it's less than, that's not the PPP, but that's the economic injury disaster loan through the SBA. If the loan is less than $200,000, you don't need a personal guarantee. So whoever you put in as the owner, it kind of doesn't matter because you don't have to guarantee it. If the loan is over $200,000, you do need to have a personal guarantor. And for the economic disaster loan, it goes up to $2 million. The payroll protection loan goes up to $10 million. Okay. From my 2019 941 report includes my staff of 17. However, I only have 5 employees today. So I will report the wages that are on my report or adjust according to the staff now. Well, here's the thing. Let's say you request 2.5 times your average payroll from last year, but now your average payroll is a third of that. When you get the money, you still have to use it for payroll. And so if you're not going to use it for payroll, then it's not going to be forgiven. So you should only request the amount that you're actually going to be able to use and prove that you've used for payroll expenses, right? Because if you request an amount that was based on 17 employees and now you only have 5, you're not going to be able to prove that you used all that money for payroll because you don't have that many people. So I would request what is reflective of today. Should we ask for less than our average payroll if some of our staff is not currently working? Yeah, I think I just answered that. I applied for the disaster loan and the other day because I didn't know enough about PPP. Can I apply for PPP as well, as long as I only accept one of them? You can accept both of them. Like I mentioned before, you can apply for multiple loans, get multiple loans, as long as your use of funds is different. So what you're going to use the money for is different purposes. For any staff that make more than 100,000, do you know how we adjust the payroll cost? Yeah, you can only count $100,000 of any one individual staff person. So you have to, like, if you have someone that makes 150,000, you have to take 50,000 off for the annual payroll before you divide by 12 to calculate your average monthly cost. Yeah. So to confirm, if PPP loan is over 200, we have to have someone. No, if the disaster loan is over 200, you need a personal guarantor. I was talking about the disaster loan, not PPP. They're two different things. The economic injury disaster loan is a loan that includes a $10,000 forgivable grant. The PPP is 100% forgivable if you use the money for payroll. Okay. Is PPP going to be interest-free or will there be interest? Essentially, it's totally free if you do what you're supposed to do. So if you take the money out and you use it as you're supposed to, and in a couple of months you apply for debt forgiveness, then all of the debt is forgiven and you haven't paid anything on it. But if you don't use the money like you're supposed to, then the interest rate is 1%, and you don't start making payments until month 12. So all payments are deferred until month 12, and the interest rate is only 1%. Still a pretty good deal. 1%, so quite favorable, correct. Yeah. iPhone, whoever prefers iPhone, even if it's not forgiven, the amount unforgiven is still a loan at 1%, so quite favorable, correct. To confirm, we're talking about annual gross wages, not the full payroll total. And I'm not sure what the difference is. I'm not a payroll person. Annual gross wages versus full payroll total. I don't know what the difference is. I'm not good enough at payroll to know that. Okay, should we exclude payroll taxes? I don't know. I'm not sure if payroll taxes are included or not. The loan application doesn't say if you include payroll taxes. I would look at that. I'm not 100% sure. Our understanding is yes, payroll, not what you pay on top, but we aren't sure. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Okay, somebody just posted it. Marcy just posted a good, and you guys might want to look in the chat at Marcy's post. Okay. Someone says you can include state payroll taxes. And then someone else says payroll taxes are excluded. So I don't know. Okay, can PPP used to cover independent contractors? You guys gotta listen because I answered that question 5 times. No, they can't. As long as we get our application in tomorrow, do we have a good chance of receiving funds? Yes. And then Stephanie says, not correct. You can include the state and local taxes you pay. Okay, so there's clearly discrepancy over this. I don't know what the right answer is. Employer state taxes are payroll costs. Okay. All right. Okay. I think we should probably wrap it
All right,
up.
good, perfect. And that was the text I just sent her. Can everybody,
Thanks, guys.
if your video isn't on, maybe just bring your video on and give her a round of applause. She can't hear it, but she can see it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Oh. My pleasure, everyone. Stay safe. Be well.
That was a heroic effort by our dear friend, and if you didn't see it in the chat, volunteer Susan Lamping at CDC Small Business. She's doing this out of the goodness of her heart and for the greatness of our region and all of you. So much appreciation to her, absolutely. So we will have a record of all the words and questions in the chat, and we'll go through and do our best to collect answers to anything that didn't get addressed. We're doing our best to capture all of that information, and we've also been doing our best to capture the wisdom that Susan was sharing in notes, and we'll share that out along with the recording. So if you missed anything, you'll be able to listen and share that recording as well. It's really our honor to be able to do this with you. So I'm going to hand it back over to Debbie McKeon to close us out. David Lynn is with us from MDF and sends his best, but Debbie, please take us into the evening, maybe a long evening for many of the people on this webinar who are about to go dive into their documents.
I think so. So for sure, we will let Susan know how much we all appreciate her for this. We definitely understand how confusing and conflicting it is at this time. So we'll do our best also as information keeps coming to share it back out if it seems like it's an important update that could help you. But we do know that there's a sense of urgency to get your information in. Please know, I know you're all going to reach out to your bankers, but Susan was honest when she said it's a struggle for them right now because they're not even sure how it works. So we're going to keep trying to see if we can also encourage bankers in our region to really partner with us for the nonprofit sector clients that they could have as their customers. So with that, have a good evening, be well, be safe. And feel free to reach out if you have anything that you think we can help you with. We certainly are not the experts, but we try and connect you to the experts that you need. Have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.